Sounds good. Yeah, absolutely, Brian. It's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Sure, glad to be here.
So before we get into your good work, I want to know first and foremost, 5 years ago, this pandemic was throwing all of us scattering like marbles. How did you ultimately survive that time period, and how has it radiated into your work today?
Yeah, so I'll speak, personally, of course, there's obviously changes. I had four kids at the time, and trying to raise four kids during a pandemic and not knowing, what was going to happen was a daunting challenge in and of itself. But, fortunately, I have a wife who's a saint, and she figured it all out for me. From a work perspective, I was actually trying a case and got a verdict on the Friday before the lockdown the subsequent week. And COVID completely shut down the legal system like it did, the rest of society. Essentially, all trials stopped, courtrooms closed to a large extent. Lawyers went home to take care of their families, myself included, right? Particularly in the beginning until we figured it all out. Um, and so once that sort of initial break in the action entirely ended, the law transitioned. And to go to some of your questions, I think a lot of it has stayed and because of COVID, and they're good things.
Yeah.
To give you an example, I used to travel to court almost daily to attend, what are fairly routine status conferences. And so did every other lawyer in Southern California. That's changed. Most lawyers attend those via Zoom. I think the courts and the judges like that those routine, scheduling conferences are handled on Zoom. It's more efficient. There's less time away from the office. There's freeway congestion issues and, everything in Southern California. It's really been great. So, Zoom has taken over the legal community. We now handle mediations by Zoom instead of being in person doing it. There are remote opportunities for trials even. It changed a lot. Some of it has stuck around. Some of it's going back to the old ways, but it's been good overall, I
So let's if I put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-old kids right now at career day,
think. Okay.
and one of the kids wanted to know what you did for a living, how would you explain it?
Well, it might be a little different given the type of work I do, but I'll give you the general substance. So, I'm a trial lawyer. I like on TV, I go in and then I try cases on behalf of my clients in a courtroom in front of a judge in a robe. And, those 12 jurors are could be a different number depending on the court system you're in that are off to the side. And I get to advocate on behalf of clients that I believe in and clients that I'm trying to get justice for. I'd probably leave out this part from a 12-year-old kids, but the majority of my work is actually advocating for survivors of childhood sexual assault. What that means is, unfortunately, in our society for decades, kids have been taken advantage of and exploited and abused by pedophiles and terrible human beings. And it's my job to give them an avenue of relief in the civil system, meaning I sue people for money as opposed, I don't get to put people behind bars. I would certainly like to.
Yeah.
It's not what I do. But what I try to do is hold the institutions that put that child and that predator in contact with one another accountable for their institutional actions that let that abuse occur.
So when you were 12 years old, did you always want to be a lawyer? What was your dream?
Not at 12. It actually came up. I don't remember the exact year. I tell the story quite a bit, actually. I have an older sister. I think I was like young high school years or whatever. And she made we were in a fight, like most siblings are. And she's like, you should be a lawyer because you refuse to lose an argument. And I don't know why at the time I was like a lawyer, whatever. I wasn't the best student, growing up and but it stuck with me. And during my undergrad, I actually got a job as a law firm, completely coincidentally, really like serving papers and doing like, tasks that I could do in the middle of the day in between classes of college. And I got to see what lawyers do. And it stuck with me. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. I worked with some great people who sort of let me see behind the curtain of what being a lawyer is all about. And, so it was really probably, midway through my undergrad degree that I was fully committed to going to law school.
Who was your hero? Who's been an inspiration for you?
I had a fantastic mentor. So right out of law school, I got a job at a law firm here in Southern California. I was mentored by a guy named Dan Sullivan, great human being, fantastic trial lawyer. And I remember it like my first year, which is, the year most young lawyers don't get to do anything fun and all they do is read documents and sit in an office. I went into Mr. Sullivan's office. Is I call him Dan because he's my friend now. And he's like, and I'd like, hey, I want to go to trial with you. And I thought he would laugh me out of his office. And he's like, okay, I got one starting in a week, right? And so, I got to experience a trial at a young age as a lawyer and stuck with me. Miss Dan Sullivan and I later became business partners together up until the point he retired. And I still see him on a regular basis now, usually on a golf course.
So what was one of your early trials that really made you grow, that was difficult, but you look back and you think that was a seminal experience for me that helped me get to where I'm at today?
Yeah, so I'd go back to my story about my mentor. In my younger years of being a lawyer, of being a trial lawyer, I always tried cases with him, right? Because he was the experienced guy and clients would want him there. And my role in those trials just steadily increased. And I remember very vividly the first case I ever tried on my own was in Modesto, California, not the best city to be in, middle of Central California in the summer. But I got to try it by myself and I won that case. And I thought, okay, I can do this myself and really be the trial lawyer that I thought I was.
So how do you balance all this out throughout the years? Because I know being a lawyer, that it requires a lot of time. You obviously have a family, you have a soul, you have a nurture. What's your philosophy on balancing that?
Um, to be bluntly honest with everyone, I was bad at it in the beginning. I spent far too much time away from my family, my kids at a young age. The law is a very all-encompassing position. It's a 24-hour day position. Clients call at all times of the night and all times of the weekend. And you add to that going to trial, and for those out there who don't never had that experience, a courtroom is open from generally like 9 to 4.
Yeah.
If you're in trial as a lawyer, you're working 6 a.m. to midnight every single day because you have to prepare for the next day after the day in trial ends, right? The jurors get to go home, the judge gets to go home, the witnesses get to go home, and the lawyers go back to the office and work. So I did not do a good job. I have a lot of regrets that I've discussed, with my wife in particular, about the amount of time I spent away from my family early. I've tried to get better over the years. I have now sort of non-negotiable times when I do stop and or if I commit to a vacation, I really go on vacation now versus, I can't tell you how many I canceled. If I tell my kids I'm going to be at, some sporting event or whatever now, barring something drastic, I'm there. So I think it's about, realizing what is important in life. And I think being a better father and a better husband makes me a better lawyer too.
So being in this world of law, it can be a pretty serious, heavy world. So let's say you walk into a room with all of your colleagues that you've worked with throughout the years and clients, and you can tell them one fun story. Jumping out of an airplane, wrestling an alligator, outrunning a bear, first concert you saw. What would be a fun story you could tell that room?
So, okay, I got a good one. That's a great question. This is a lot of fun. I don't get that. I was in a trial once, and the very first part of any trial, civil or criminal, if there's a jury, it's called the voir dire process, meaning you actually pick the jurors that are going to serve in a case. And it's they bring people in from the jury room, and they get put in the box they call it, which is that box you see on TV where everybody sits, and you get to ask probing questions of jurors so that you can decide whether they can be fair and impartial. And I try, and jurors are always nervous, right? They don't want to be there. They're in a courtroom. It's intimidating. They got to speak in front of other people. And so I always try to add some levity to it. And I had this trial, was in downtown LA. This is probably 10, 15 years ago. And I asked one of the prospective jurors, it was a man, and I said, what do you do for a living? And he writes, I write music. And I'm like, really? What music do you write? And he goes, actually, I write theme songs for TV shows. And I was like, I couldn't let that go. I'm like, okay, can you give us, an example? Tell us a song that you wrote. And he's like, I actually wrote the theme song to SpongeBob SquarePants.
Wow.
And I was like, I mean, I had young kids. I'm like, I know that song. And, but that was when the show was still, kind of on its newer side. And everybody started chuckling. And I looked at the judge and I said, Judge, with the honor's permission, can juror number 3 sing the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song? And everybody started laughing, which put the judge in an awkward spot because he had to say yes. And he goes, I'll give you one verse. And he literally like sang the first verse of the SpongeBob SquarePants song in a courtroom. And
That's
you know,
awesome.
it was a funny story for me
Yeah.
at the time. I knew I had an experience with that judge where I knew I wouldn't get in too much trouble for doing that. And it brought down the tension
Yeah.
in the stress in the courtroom for all those jurors. And looking back, I've learned from that you can take a risk every now and then
Yeah.
if you know your judge, though, right?
Yeah.
But it really can relax people that don't normally find themselves in a courtroom.
Now I'm going to have that jingle in my head all day. I love it.
Yeah. Good luck getting that out, right?
Love it. So, of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Um, well, I mean, I'm proudest of my kids first and foremost. I've got, two of them in college, two of them that are close to getting there, and they make me proud every single day. On the law side of it, I think I've reached a point in my career where I sort of feel like I'm in my prime, so to speak. My wife might roll her eyes if she heard me say that, but like I think I'm pretty good at this. And most importantly, now I get to select the cases that I want to work on and the types of law I want to do. And I'm very proud of the fact that I now am in a position to represent people that have gone through, what is probably the worst experience they'll ever have in their life in many instances, whether that's being a victim of childhood sexual assault, whether that's being, an employee who was horrifically mistreated at work and was let go, someone that's been a catastrophic accident and suffered injuries, whatever it is. My job is to help someone who needs help. And I really enjoy the benefits of that. I've been on both sides. I've done defense work before, and the appreciation and the gratitude I get from helping someone who needs it is what, gets me out of bed every morning.
So the crux of all of this is you. At the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Geez, this is deep, Joe. All right.
It's a therapy
Who do I think
question.
I am? I think I'm an advocate. I'm stubborn and I like to win. And so I'm very competitive and I give everything I have to my cases and my clients. They hire me as a lawyer and if a family, for example, puts their faith in me to get justice on behalf of a child who was abused, they're going to get everything I've got. If I lose, it will not be because I'm not prepared. I will always be the best prepared person.
So if anyone is interested, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Sure. So we have a website. Our firm is called Greenberg Gross. We have a website. It's called ggtriallaw.com. If you Google Greenberg Gross, you'll see it. I operate that firm. There's, my website or my email address is on there. You'll see my bio. There's phone numbers for all our offices. We're in Southern California. We actually have two offices in Southern California, a very expanding office in Las Vegas, Nevada, and a New York office. We try to help as many people as we can all across the country.
I love it. I will put links in the show notes. Brian, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you
Yeah,
for
sure.
taking some time out. Best of luck with everything.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.